Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cast. We're from the niche-case.com, where we love Aotearoa sport. We love a bit of Aotearoa as well, and that's all we're here to do. Just chat through Aotearoa sporting matters, specifically our big four in the podcast format. The rugby leagues, got a bit of under-19 stuff happening in Australia. SG Ball, and I'm also tracking Tasha Gale Cup, which is the New South Wales Rugby League under-19 competition. Obviously, we've got Warriors teams in the under-17s, which I don't worry too much about, and the under-19 SG Ball. So we'll be talking about that later on. Also got basketball, Stephen Adams, but a Kiwis and NBL on the radar today. Super Smash cricket is heading towards finals, and we've still got a little bit of a Black Caps spotlight with them after the Champions Trophy soon. And of course, we cater to all your footballing needs as well. A-League, both A-Leagues, because that's who we are, that's what we do. And of course, Flying Kiwis, where we have a lot of Aotearoa Kiwi footballers doing great things around the world. And we are recording this on a Wednesday, so we've had a little bit of a schedule shuffle, which means today is Wednesday and tomorrow is Thursday. And we'll still be doing our bonus podcast for the folks on Patreon and paid Substack subscriptions tomorrow on Thursday, where we will keep on discussing some Aotearoa sport. Any leftovers from today's podcast, stuff that we, get out of the house a couple hours later and we're like, bugger, should have said that. That would have been a good one. Or I forgot about that. Yeah, what about this guy? What about that girl? All that stuff that we might have missed in the big old niche cast, we will be discussing tomorrow in our bonus podcast, as well as some Super Smash updates, because that is heading towards finals. I think the last game day is tomorrow, Thursday. Wellington versus Northern Brave finishes the regular round, plural, and then after Central versus Auckland today on Wednesday. So we probably be talking a whole lot of Super Smash, and I also suspect there'll be a few Flying Kiwis that we don't discuss here today that we need to cover tomorrow in the bonus podcast as well. So if you're listening to this, if you've been reading the Niche Case and you enjoy our work, we always need more support. We always need more help to keep doing what we love to do and service Aotearoa sport. So the best way to fund our mahi and support us is through Patreon, couple of dollars a month. Keep it simple there, and you can access our bonus podcast every week. Of course, you can also sign up to our newsletter via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com, every Monday and Friday. That's completely free. And then you can upgrade to a paid subscription to access, or to help us out, because a little bit of money always goes hard for us. We are the lo-fi sage Buddha folk, so we only need a little bit of money to keep us rocking and rolling, moving and grooving. But if you upgrade to a paid Substack subscription, it's a massive boost for us, and of course you can access our bonus podcast there as well. We're up there on Buy Me a Coffee if you want to make a donation. Otherwise, everything we're doing is completely free. Just have a listen on your favorite platforms, show your support however you need to do it on whatever platform you're listening to. Leave a comment if you wanna. You don't have to, because we're probably not going to read it, because we try to get offline as much as possible. We encourage you to do the same. Get off your computer, get off your device, and get out in the bush. Get out on the beaches, get out on the land of Aotearoa, because it is the greatest country in the whole wide world, and we are here to celebrate it. So yeah, less social media, less online, the better. But of course, you need a bit of online stuff to follow all the Aotearoa sporting action, which is what we love to do. Before we tap into some mindfulness, I was curious, who's your favorite mata?
My favorite mata. I'm guessing this is in reference to Max Mata and Juan Mata playing against each other in the A-League the other day, but I don't know. I kind of want to go with the guy who took the photo, Ben Mata, as well. So I feel like he's the undercover one, but he's laying it down for Wellington Olympic every year, winning a bunch of trophies with them. A goal scoring centre back as well, a penalty taking centre back, pretty important stuff. Pretty much, he scores bundles of goals for them, but he also scores almost all of those goals either from the penalty spot or from headers, which I think is just an amazing combination. It's not completely the Chris Wood combination because he has a few other tricks up his back, but those are probably the two things that Chris Wood is, if not best known for, two things he should be best known for. His two most sort of extreme finishes, his highest end stuff, is world-class penalty taker and scores more headers than any other. I think they're more. I think more headed goals than any other active Premier League player. But if not, he's top 10 all time in the Premier League for headed goals. He's moving his way up there. He's just signed a new 2-year contract, so he'll be adding to that. But yeah, if you like that, if you like that particular bag, then Ben Mata does similar stuff from centre back in the New Zealand National League. So I'm going to go with the trick answer there and give it to Ben Mata.
That's a fantastic answer. When you're setting it up, you're adding a little bit of context for the audience, because I just threw that question at you like a little bit of a deucerer out the back of the hand. I was like, yeah, come on, mate. There's only two Matas around here. You know, Juan Mata, Max Mata, and then you hit me with the third Mata, Ben Mata, and I mean that is pure niche case areas because it's a deep cut. And it's a deep cut from Aotearoa domestic sport, and it's also a deep cut of Kiwi footballing excellence. So shout out to Ben Mata, Max Mata, and the 1-2 Mata, who's far less interesting than the Mata brothers. Just quickly, another little deucer coming at you here. I read this in the newsletter. I found some stats, and we had Te Martin and Shaun Johnson playing the same number of games. 16 games for the Warriors last year. So I'm just going to quiz you. Just get your vibe. Right? You don't need to know you probably don't know the details. So I'm just curious, like, what comes to mind when I ask you who had more of these stats? Remember, they both played the same number of games. So we're dealing with 16 games last year, the 2024 NRL season. Who scored the most tries?
Shaun Johnson.
It was a tie, 5-5. So it was a bit of a tricky start there. Who had the most try assists?
That should be Shaun Johnson, but at least one of these is going to be the opposite of what would be expected. So I might play the Te Martin card here.
That is the right card. Te Martin had 22 try assists. Shaun Johnson had 16. Who had more runs?
That one, I reckon, has got to be Martin.
It's definitely Martin. He had 99 runs. Shaun Johnson had 55. This one should be the most obvious because we talked about it a lot last year. Well, let's stay away from kicking meters. Let's say who had the most kicks and kicking meters.
Still Shaun Johnson, surely.
Yeah, Shaun Johnson had more kicks and more kicking meters. But let's get back into the real nuggets. Who had more line breaks?
Ooh. Well, I'll go with the guy who took more runs than Te Martin.
That's sensible. He had twice as many. He had 8 line breaks. Shaun Johnson had 4. Who had more tackle breaks?
Again, I'll go with the guy who had twice as many line breaks, is probably busting some tackles to get there. So I'll go with Martin again.
It's good rugby league common sense. More runs means more tackle breaks, more line breaks. And, well, unless you suck at running, unless you suck at running.
Sure, you might just be getting pushed backwards every time, but
I'll set this one up for you. Because more tackles doesn't mean you're the man. It just means you're making more tackles. So who had more tackles? Te Martin had 292. Shaun Johnson had 259. Similar-ish over a long season. But who had more missed tackles?
Feels like a Shaun Johnson one.
It is a Shaun Johnson one. He had 57 missed tackles. Te Martin had 46, which is similar. I don't want to give this away. Who had more errors in the NRL last season? Te Martin or Shaun Johnson?
Well, following the other logic, I reckon Johnson was probably put in more positions of playmakery type things and expected to do more. So I think he would have had the most errors of the two.
You, I think I mistyped this one because it's exactly the same as missed tackles
Yeah.
in my uh, writing, which could have been an error, but it's still the same point because Shaun Johnson had the most errors, according to foxsports.com.au.
Right.
21 errors. Te Maire Martin had 11. So
Interesting.
the way I mistyped it was the same as missed tackles, which was a difference of 9, but it's actually similar with errors because it's a difference of 10. So just there, Shaun Johnson had more errors than Te Maire Martin. He missed more tackles than Te Maire Martin. Te Maire Martin had more tackle breaks, more line breaks, more run meters, more runs, more try assists, and they had the same number of tries. So I don't know what to take away from that other than maybe Te Maire Martin was better than Shaun Johnson. But there's the key thing about the kicking, and that's one thing we'll have to watch out for with the Warriors heading into the 2025 season. Just something to stew on, because I do have this belief across all Aotearoa sporting teams. Well, not all of them, just the ones I know a lot about. Maybe they're going to get better. Like maybe the Black Caps are going to get better without some of their senior players who have departed. Maybe the Warriors are going to be better without Tohu Harris and Shaun Johnson. I don't know. Do you have anything similar? Like well, I don't really see how it applies to football or basketball.
Yeah, I mean, the Breakers got worse without Tom Abercrombie, so it doesn't quite work. And I mean, the All Whites did have that spell where they moved through, like brought through a bunch of young players all at once, but it was sort of like they were just the best players. It wasn't really like they had to move out a generation. It was more because COVID happened and they hadn't played much for a couple of years, so it was kind of a bit of a clean slate. Maybe there's some potential there with the football ferns. It hasn't happened yet, but they have had a few recent retirements and a few of their senior players. I mean, the thing is, it's not happened all at once, though. It's sort of been spread out over a few years, so it's been a more of a gradual one. But there is, and so therefore, I can't say either way whether I don't know, but I'm open to the concept. There is a possibility maybe they'll to move on upwards in the next year or two when we start seeing, as we already have been seeing, a few more of their next generation players moving on into regular squads and into starting 11s and such. But the jury's out on that because of, as I say, that's already kind of happened, and I don't know that they have gotten better to begin with that. So we'll see. Maybe a new coach will be the difference.
Indeed. Can we get a little bit of mindfulness, please?
We sure can, and we've got a little bit of mindfulness from the father of philosophy, Plato. Very I don't know, not particularly paternal idea here, but it's a good one nonetheless. A universal bit of philosophy. He said, "Be kind, because everyone you meet is fighting a harder battle."
It does remind you that your problems probably aren't that big a problem compared to someone else. That you can get a bit down in the dumps and be like, oh, I'm going through this. Oh, shit, this has happened. Oh, right. And then as soon as you get out yourself, you realize, well, there's definitely someone else in the world who's got a far worse situation than you do. And that person may be the bugger. Well, that's a couple of buggers already in the podcast. That person may be the lady, the bloke walking past you. They might be up struggle street, far worse position than you. And I think sometimes we do assume that our problems are the biggest problems in the world. But the reality is that my problems aren't necessarily problems to anyone else, because most other people are going through far worse shit than me or you, and it's just a nice reminder to chill out. Your problems aren't that bad, and a smile goes a long way in helping other people deal with their problems as well.
Yeah, it's just a matter of perspective, isn't it? I mean, and even if the other person's battle isn't harder than yours, it's still a battle. It's still everyone's got stuff they got to go through, even if you do happen to be suffering a bit excessively. I think if anything, the people who are in those situations are more aware of that and more, you know, have that perspective a little bit better. But yeah, it's like it's easy to fall into that trap of like, why always me? Why do I have to be the one who gets picked on? It's like, well, the simple answer is you don't, and you're not. Everyone has their problems. It's not always you. It's not only you. Uh, it's you as well as everyone else. We all got stuff to do, we all got stuff to deal with.
Indeed, and flowing on from the mindfulness, I want to harmonize the people on a positive vibration ting. I was brewing this as like a best case scenario, but I mean, the best case scenario is pretty easy for the things I'm going to discuss. Like the best case scenario for the Black Caps is they win the Champions Trophy. The best case scenario for Te Maire Martin and the Warriors is that they win the NRL Championship next season. The best case scenario for Auckland FC, they win the A-League. Best case scenario for the Wellington Phoenix, they win the A-League. Both teams, same time, same year. Best case scenario for Steven Adams is that he dominates for the Houston Rockets and they win the NBA championship. And then whatever happens after that doesn't matter because they just won the NBA championship. So as I was meditating on this, I was like, no, best case scenario doesn't really work. But maybe trying to just get everyone harmonizing on the positive vibration thing. Maybe that's better. So, like a positive outcome for the Black Caps at the Champions Trophy, said it before, say it again, making the semi-finals. I think semi-finals is a positive outcome for the Black Caps, but the specific player I thought of when pondering this positive outlook was Tom Latham. And this is like, you could roll through all Black Caps players, but just the insight into my mind, I was thinking Tom Latham, okay, he's going to be batting in Pakistan, UAE, he's probably going to be playing a few sweep shots, so the positive vision I have for Tom Latham coming in, just soldiering through the middle stages of one-day innings. Lots of sweep shots, couple of reverse sweep shots, cut shots, rotating the strike. Everyone's complaining about his strike rate, but he sets up the innings and the Black Caps win games with Tom Latham playing a nifty hand. Positive outlook for Te Maire Martin. Given what we just said, I think a positive vision for Te Maire Martin that is rather realistic is that he's been working on his kicking game. He's got some refinement in his kicking game. His kicking game improves, but Te Maire Martin flourishes as a puppeteer. He's pulling the strings. He's organizing the team as a leader at halfback. He's distributing the footy to where it needs to go. Everyone's on time. Every play is crisp because Te Maire Martin is pulling the strings. And then he uses his running game and his passing distribution to score points. So he sets up points. I think that's the best case. Well, it's not the best case. Again, it's the positive vision for how Te Maire Martin can play as the Warriors halfback. Because everyone complains, oh, he sucks at kicking. What is Te Maire Martin actually good at? Well, the positive outlook is that he is the puppeteer. He's pulling the strings, he's distributing the footy, and he's allowing everyone else to do what they need to do, and he's executing Andrew Webster's game plan. One more little pit stop before we get to the final destination of this. A positive outlook for Wellington Phoenix. that both teams make finals footy, which I believe is top 6 in the A-League. And we've got the Wellington Phoenix Women are 6th right now, and we've got the Wellington Phoenix Men 9th. A positive vision for the Wellington Phoenix Football Club is that both teams make A-League finals, which I think is realistic, and I think it's for the men especially, but also you wrote about the women, how they haven't made the finals before, so that will be a big achievement. And the men, very young team. So if they can stay in finals footy with the young team, given the turnover they had, I think that's going to be a positive outcome. We've kind of had a positive vision manifested with Chris Wood, because he's got a new deal, he's dominating with Nottingham Forest, and much to your surprise, he's probably going to be qualifying for the Champions League footy with Nottingham Forest. So I think a lot of those positive visions, the mana waves we have directed towards Nottingham, have been manifested. What is your positive vision for Steven Adams with the Houston Rockets? And I'll set it up, you can have a little ponder on it, because Steven Adams is playing well for the Houston Rockets. Very well, in fact. And obviously we are Kiwis, we love Steven Adams, the Doc or Steven Adams, so we are always tapped in to the low-key, sneaky excellence of Steven Adams. All the things that Americans don't see, we see them like with a spotlight on them. They've got neon lights just flashing everywhere for our Kiwi bias. But Steven Adams still plays, he chimes in. Like, he's played less than 20 minutes in every game this season. He's not playing a major role for the Houston Rockets. So there is the stepping out of my positive vision. There is a situation where Steven Adams, despite how much we love him on the Houston Rockets and the role he has, he might be traded. He might be shuffled out of the rotation. They might not offer him a new contract. Like, there's all these negative things or just ho-hum things that could happen for Steven Adams. And I'm curious, as our resident Steven Adams whisperer, what is your positive vision for Steven Adams over the back half of this NBA season, and what might happen heading into next season?
This one, I think, is a little different than the other examples, which are fairly you can sort of set a checklist for it and just like tick the boxes. If Tamati Martin does that, if Chris Wood does that, if the Wellington Phoenix men and women do, hit their objectives. With Steven Adams, I think there's a little bit of like choose your own adventure stuff there, because it depends a little bit on so if he stays at the Houston Rockets, we can set the objectives there. We can say we want to see him sort of growing into a bit more of a steady 15 to 20 minutes maybe per night, getting some overlap with Alperen Sengun. It's not a lot of minutes to go around there when you've got an all-star level center ahead of him and he's playing off the bench. So if you can, don't need to be greedy about it. If he's 15 or so minutes per night averaging that's all right. As long as the team keeps winning, as long as he keeps being very productive in his time, and if they go on a big old playoff run as well, as they seem primed to do, because not only are they high up the Western Conference standings, but they also have a spectacular record against other playoff other teams in the playoff positions as it stands as well. They've been very good at beating other good teams, which should set them up nicely for the playoffs. So if that's the season that Steven Adams has, I think that is a very positive season. If he's contributing, even if it's in a much smaller way than we're used to, contributing to a team that goes on a playoff run and getting through the season without any sort of setbacks physically, given that he'd missed pretty much 2 years of basketball with his knee troubles. I think that alone would make it pretty handy. Then you start wondering about okay, then is that a solid role? He enjoys that, less strain by playing fewer minutes, maybe signs a contract extension. Maybe he walks as a free agent and says, okay, I've got the career back on track, but there are bigger roles I could get elsewhere or whatever. or there's the old trade deadline aspect of someone. So I think for the objective ways, like that's we can map it out like I did there with the Houston stuff. But if another team comes in to trade for him and says, we actually think you could be our starting center in the playoffs, that is also a positive vision, which doesn't tick any of the stuff that we're talking about for the Houston Rockets. Like he could not do any of that, but have a positive vision, go in a different pathway to another team. Um, but that's just all too speculative to guess about what that might be at this stage. So we sort of got to wait and see how things go. It's only a couple more weeks until the trade deadline. So if we're going to find out that, we'll find out soon. My gut feeling is that he stays with the Rockets for the rest of the season. I think they traded him to make a playoff run, and I think they see that he has value to them, and that even if it is 10, 15, 20 minutes off the bench, whatever. But we'll see how that goes, and then if he does stick it out, I think he would probably be happy to re-sign if they decent terms. But then also he's going to have options in free agency, so there's kind of there's a bunch of different paths he could go on there. I guess he has. We'll put a positive vision on the positive vision and say there are many different positive visions he could end up with. Like he could have a positive vision by leaving, could have a positive vision by re-signing, could have a positive vision by staying but then leaving. As long as he's playing playoff basketball and as long as he stays healthy, I guess those are the key things.
What do you want though?
I'm open. I think if he leaves I'm happy with what he's doing at the Rockets. I think he's playing well, and that's important. And he's on course to fulfilling that positive vision. But if there is a better opportunity, I would like to see him playing starters minutes and getting putting up crazy stats. And just kind of getting a little bit more attention and being able to enjoy it, but like being able to put on a Steven Adams game and not have to not pay attention for more than 50% of it because he's not on the court, and having to pick and choose mode. I would prefer that, just from the Kiwi bias standpoint, from like my viewership standpoint. I would like to see more of Steven Adams when I'm watching Steven Adams, but he's not going to make his career decisions based on what I can watch. He's got his own battles to fight. So my preference would be, uh, I think my ultimate preference would be a trade to a better team where he can play 25 minutes a night. But I just don't think there are very many teams where that's possible. So I think the most realistic preference is probably just stay at the Rockets and keep doing what you're doing, because what he's doing is pretty good right now. Like he's excelling in the offensive rebounding. He's excelling in the screen assist. He's excelling in box outs. Basically, he is back to doing all of the stereotypical stuff, stereotypical Steven Adams hard work that he's built a career upon doing. Like he's back to doing all of those things now post knee injury. It's just that his minutes are smaller, which is why he's not quite having the same statistical output. But like if you balance the per 36 minutes type stuff, you balance the ratings and whatever, the ratios, it's all the same as what he was doing before he got injured. It's just simply that he has a smaller role with the Rockets. But that might not be such a bad thing after 2 years out of the league,
Yeah, I do appreciate your different perspective in that a trade or a departure from Houston may be the best thing for Steven Adams and your viewing experience as well. But I'm more thinking that I don't want him to leave Houston Rockets. Now, I understand it's very American. They're trying to trade everyone. They're trying to get rid of everyone every year. Players are assets. It's a diminishing asset. It's an ascending asset. All this bullshit business jargon that we don't care about here in Aotearoa. Houston Rockets and Steven Adams is the perfect marriage for me. And I want Steven Adams to stay on the Houston Rockets. And to be honest, as long as this is what's Houston Rockets are up to, I want Steven Adams to finish his career with the Houston Rockets. I'm gonna take Steven Adams playing, what's he got here? Last 5 games, 14 minutes, 17 minutes, 18 minutes, 14 minutes, 13 minutes. I'm happy with Steven Adams doing that for a team that is not only good, but also, now obviously the Houston Rockets aren't embodying the Steven Adams mana. They're embodying their coach's mana, and that becomes the team culture they have, especially with like how the strengths and the strengths of various young players they have, like defense, hustle, all those things are complementary of Steven Adams, and Steven Adams adds to that. So I think that Houston is the best place for Steven Adams, and I think Steven Adams, you always hear Houston Rockets, they're such a young team, they've got a fantastic young team, they need to make moves, but they've also got really hearty veterans there. Steven Adams, Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet, anyone I missed, shout them out right now. But like we have seen it time and time again, young teams need veterans on the team to lead them forward. And I think Steven Adams, who he is, what he does, like he's not going to be too fast if he's playing fewer minutes. And I think the coach and what the Houston Rockets are, they seem to appreciate the value that Steven Adams and the veterans offer, where a lot of other American folk, they couldn't care less. They're trying to trade all the veterans, get rid of them, and just get some other players. So, we believe in mana, we believe in team culture, we believe in chemistry, and I think Steven Adams offers that in, bucket loads. So my positive vision is that Steven Adams stays with the Houston Rockets. He settles down to the best that he can in the NBA kind of trade culture. And to be honest, he finishes his career with a strong Houston Rockets team. I don't know if that's realistic, but that's me deploying some Kiwi fundamentals onto the NBA. And I'm just, I think Houston Rockets is a great place for Steven Adams to be, especially with obviously if you're on a good team with a young core that's on the rise, that's a good place for you to be. But it's more the Houston Rockets, their culture, their playing style. It's perfect for Steven Adams. And to be honest, like most of the teams he's been on have had that kind of outlook as well.
Yeah, they have. And I mean, I've been looking at parallels between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Houston Rockets since the moment he was traded there. And I still kind of think that this is a better version of the same thing, where you have a similarly built team. It's like they've gone through the rebuild. They're coming out of the rebuild. Got a lot of good, like extremely talented, high draft picks that they brought in themselves. Just that I think the Rockets have a better coach. And I think the Rockets' young guys are just a little more open to learning, maybe, than some of the Memphis Grizzlies guys were at times. Jaren Jackson excluded, because I think Jaren Jackson had whenever he's spoken about Steven Adams, he talks about him with great respect, but also respect in a way where, he's not just ticking the boxes and saying he does this and this and this, and he's strong and we love him, he's a team guy. He was actually going into details about ways in which Steven Adams helped him. So I think that's an exception. But I like the Memphis Grizzlies are an excellent team. They remain an excellent team. Kind of think the Houston Rockets are slightly better, though. And in that case, there's nothing at all wrong with the fit there. It is kind of perfect for Steven Adams. The only aspect is whether he would potentially get more money and more minutes somewhere else. But one thing to consider on that, two things to consider on that. First of all, I think the Houston Rockets are very, like you say, very, very aware of the worth that he has to them off the court as well as on the court in that mentorship role. I think they're well aware of that, and they want him for that. Not, I won't say as much as the offensive rebounding, but they're certainly aware that it helps. The other thing to consider is Steven Adams has never asked for a trade in his career. He signed a big extension with the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was traded just before the end of that extension, I think. But then when he went to New Orleans, he immediately signed a 2-year contract. They didn't see out that contract there because they flipped him after 1 year to the Memphis Grizzlies, where I'm pretty sure he also signed a contract extension but then they traded him before the end of the contract extension. Now he's at the end of that coming up now, like the last few months of that particular contract. Well, he's not only never asked for a trade before, I'm pretty sure he signed an extension with every team he's played at before. Well aware that, if you sign an extension, it doesn't mean you're going to stay at that team because they can trade you at any point. But he's not someone to get ants in his pants about his situation either. And he happens to be in a very good one there. And I don't think the minutes bother him so much as long as he feels like he's engaged and part of a successful and growing kind of team culture, which he very clearly is. So, yeah, like I said before, my suspicion is he sees out the season with the Houston Rockets, and frankly, I'm kind of leaning towards him signing an extension with the Rockets as well.
One thing that might help Steven Adams is that his salary's been decreasing. So his salary cap hit has been decreasing. He was below 3.5 million in his first 4 NBA seasons. Then he was between 22 and 30 million in the next 4 seasons. Then he went down to 17 million for the next 2 seasons. This season, or last season, or this season, I don't know. His last 2 seasons, he's on $12.6 million. And unless Steven Adams and his agents are like full-on American capitalistic mentalities, I think his salary will probably stay the same or decrease a little bit. If he's going to stay, I can see his salary staying the same as the salary cap increases, so his salary cap hit is lower to stay on the Houston Rockets. That way the Houston Rockets are getting good value out of Steven Adams, and Steven Adams can add to the Houston Rockets roster, especially when they've got a lot of things happening with their young players, but also some of the older players they overpaid. And I will be very interested. So his contract will end after this season and then he becomes a free agent?
Yeah, exactly that. So if they wanted to trade him and get something back in return, it would have to be before this trade deadline. And yeah, he is, as it stands, he'll be a free agent at the end of the season. And yeah, that's good. From what you're saying there, it sounds so he has had 4 distinct contracts. Is the rookie scale, the big extension with OKC, I think 2-year extensions since then. So I think I was right. What I was saying is he's signed an extension with every team that he's played for up until the Houston Rockets, who might well sign him to an extension soon. I mean, they could do it at any point, I'm pretty sure, but might be one of those see what's on offer at free agency, even if he has a leaning on wanting to come back to Houston anyway. At least table a couple of offers, and that might help you in the old bargaining. But yeah, I think you're right in that he's not going to be demanding 20 million a year. He's already in that stage where the last 2 contracts have been down a little bit on the previous one, and now he's playing off the bench. So if he stays in Houston, they're not going to play him starters minutes to be a bench player. But I think they're paying better than any other bench players in recognition of what he offers and the fact that he is there to be able to step up and start in case of an injury to Sengun or whatever. So yeah, but he's got some options. He's definitely got a couple different ways this could go.
And if you're trying to win an NBA championship, a Sengun Steven Adams combination is pretty delectable in the big man rotation. Let's just update folks on what's happening in the NBL, specifically with the Kiwis involved, because we've got the NBL season heading towards finals. Illawara and Melbourne top of the table. I don't know if that can change. They've both got 17 wins. Then you've got Sydney on 16 wins. Obviously, they've got a couple of games to play, 1 game to play, 2 games to play, whatever it is. And those 2 teams are fairly well stocked with Kiwis. Melbourne United, we've been talking about them all season long. They're 17 and 10 in second spot right now. And Sydney, with Isaiah Liafa, they are third, 16 and 11. We've also been talking a fair bit about Perth. They are in 5th, 15 and 11. Is there a clear, do you think Melbourne and Sydney are the better of those two teams and most likely to go deep into the finals? Or how else do you see this kind of finals picture playing out for the teams that have notable Kiwis? I don't think we've got anyone on Southeast Melbourne.
We do have Tom Vodanovic.
Yeah, sorry,
Gets
I
about
always
10
forget
minutes
him.
a game off the bench, yeah.
Adelaide, no one.
Adelaide, sort of half of one. Depends if you count Keanu Rasmussen or not, who did play for Hawke's Bay in the last New Zealand NBL and was registered as a Kiwi local for that. I think he is a Kiwi father, so he's eligible to play for the Tall Blacks. So I have been counting him, but I've been counting him with an asterisk, specifically because he made the effort to go play for Hawke's Bay. I think that sort of builds a little bit of a bridge there towards that. But yeah, he's been a scholarship dude, but he's starting to or development player rather, correct NBL terminology. But he's had a little bit of he's definitely had a big step up this season in terms of his role. But he probably, I don't think you'll see a lot of him come playoff time. Unfortunately, that's just how that goes. The rosters get tightened, and your depth guys don't play so much. But that's how you win basketball games. It's fair enough. Everyone knows the picture.
So we probably won't see much of Dante Russo Nance for the Perth Wildcats as they compete for a final spot with the play-in tournament. He's averaging 3.3 minutes a game for Perth. They also have Hiram Harris averaging 11.5 minutes per game and Ty Webster averaging 17.3 minutes per game. So a nice little trio of Kiwis. Let's narrow it down to a duo with Ty Webster and Hiram Harris as Dante Russo Nance is still developing his status with Perth. Although it's also always important.
It might not even be a duo though, because although, well, we'll see. Hiram Harris he's averaging about 11 minutes for the season, but that's been lower recently. It feels like he's not been playing a lot in the last sort of month or so, or month or two, probably a little bit longer than that. And Ty Webster, of course, has been injured with a hamstring strain or tear or something, so he hasn't actually played since early December. They did say there's a chance he'll be back though. For I think it's their last game of the regular season. They're one of the teams. No, they've got two more games left in the regular season, and yeah, so we might see some Ty Webster back for that, which would be great timing because otherwise, if there's a chance that Hiram Harris isn't playing much, and we don't expect Dante Russo Nance on a development deal to play much in the playoffs / maybe even play in, depends where they finish, because when their last two games they could have a little bit of a scoop up there, but there's a slight wobble lately for Perth after some good form before that. So they need Ty Webster back basically, and it sounds like they will get him back in time for postseason basketball. So that's important. That's good to know.
Isaiah Liafa is averaging 20.4 minutes. So he's in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Sydney's Kings players who are averaging over 20 minutes. So he's in a good spot as the Sydney Kings chase a deep finals run. And then, of course, we've got the Melbourne United crew. Flynn Cameron, youngster from Aotearoa, he's on the rise, 13.6 minutes. He's, as we say, he's you do cut down your rotation as the games get more important, but I can still see Flynn Cameron playing a role off the bench. Then you've got Rob Lowe doing his thing, 18.9 minutes, and of course the one and only Shea Ili, 24.6 minutes, which is fourth for the most minutes for Melbourne United. Are we dealing with injuries? Are we dealing with any form slumps, any form grooves for the Melbourne United Kiwis or Liafa?
Well, not with Sydney and Liafa. He's got a nice little role basically as a sharpshooter off the bench for Sydney Kings, but I am a little bit the playoff stuff could be a little bit perilous for him potentially, because the problem with Liafa and the reason why he hasn't had the sort of, I was hoping he'd have his his very, very refined role for Sydney Kings. He's had that role, but I was hoping he'd be such a great success at that, but he hasn't been because he's shooting like 27% from 3-pointers. Like it's basically as simple as that. If he can hit his 3-pointers in the playoffs, he'll be getting good minutes. If he's not, he's going to find it a little bit harder to maintain, or quite a bit harder to maintain the minutes he was getting through the regular season. But he's had flashes. Like he's had games. There's one a couple weeks ago where he hit 3-pointers, three-pointers. I think there was one against, I'm pretty sure it was against the Breakers where he hit 7 3-pointers in a game. The one time where he really went completely off. I do feel like Le'afa at his best would be getting a bit more ball handling and being able to drive a bit more. He's kind of used as a spot shooter and he's not been hitting those shots. So that is a bit of a frisky one heading into the postseason. But as far as Melbourne goes, I mean, I think Flynn Cameron's a little bit similar. He gets bench minutes. He does get a bit more of that ball handling stuff. He does get a bit more of an opportunity to get into the paint. But he's also used as like get out there and hit some 3-pointers. The difference is he's been hitting 3-pointers. He's shooting about 38% or something like that. And that's actually dipped a little bit recently because he had a couple games where he sort of went 0-2. It was over 40% before that. So he's had that second year thing where he's there hasn't been a slump. There hasn't been a drop off. He's just made steady growth from year 1 in the NBL to year 2 in the NBL. Not probably to where he's going to get significant playoff minutes unless someone gets injured, but enough to where if someone did get injured, they would be happy enough to call upon him. But we have seen his minutes shrink a little bit in the last couple of games because Melbourne have had this run of 7 away games in a row. And this came straight after they'd lost 4 games in a row. So you're on a 4-game losing streak, and then you got to play your next 7 games away from home. That doesn't sound very nice, except that they've won 5 of those 7 games. And during those 7 games, Shea has had 2 20-point games. He's had a few under, single-digit scoring games as well. It sort of depends on what the situation is. But his 2 highest scoring games of the season have come within this 7-game streak. The most recent game they played, he had 8 assists, which is his most assists of the season. And keep in mind, he's a point guard, but Melbourne kind of play with 2 point guards because they have Matthew Dellavedova there as well. And Delly's doing most of the ball handling. Delly's getting sort of 7, 8 assists every game. Shea Lee's a bit more of like the 3 or 4 assists per game, but he had 8 assists in their most recent one. I think that was a one over Brisbane. Brisbane without Tyrell Harrison, who looks like he's going to miss the last month of the season with a concussion, unfortunately. He was putting up some big numbers for a while there, albeit for a Brisbane team that really never found a groove, which is why we're not really talking about them because they're outside of contention. I think Tasmania I think they still have a chance if they win if they win out from here. They might only have 1 game left, but if they win that game, then Ruben Tarangi and a little bit of occasional Walter Brown sightings on the bench as a development player, they might sneak into the play-in. I think that's probably less likely than likely, but there are a potential. Ruben Tarangi's, I'd say he's had a stronger season than I expected. He's a late addition to them, to Tasmania, but he's really found quite a handy role, albeit with the sort of Tarangi, the good and the bad of Ruben Tarangi, which is that he doesn't shoot the ball very well, but he's a great defender, a great leader, and a helpful presence to have on the court at any given time, albeit with the sort of you're not gonna leave the open 3-pointer for him, that aspect of it. But yeah, he's been solid. Hopefully he can sneak them up. See how that goes. But Melbourne are absolutely the team to focus on. Shea has been coming into, he seems like he's peaking. Dellavedova's fit and seems like that's combination is looking sharp. Rob Lowe is a little bit more like he had a great stint in the middle of the season. Now it's a little bit more of that thing again where it's like certain matchups are for him, certain matchups are for Marcus Lee, their import big man. So it alternates a little bit from game to game. But again, like a lot of these guys, Rob Lowe will get some minutes, and if he hits his 3-pointers, he'll get more minutes on top of that. And even if he doesn't, he's still going to be out there grabbing rebounds and doing what he does. So Melbourne United are definitely the team to follow first and foremost from the Kiwis in the NBL perspective. But there's a couple. Like if Ty Webster comes back to fitness and has a big sort of resurgent role with the Perth Wildcats, that suddenly shoots right up the list. If Le'afa knocks down a few shots on any given day, he could have a blinder like that. There's good little pockets elsewhere, but definitely Melbourne United are they're the headliners.
The headline for me in the New Zealand A-League action is the Auckland FC, the Heartbreakers. Because they love to score a late goal. And you had this note in our newsletter, the timings of the Auckland FC goals, which I'm assuming you wrote them in order of like goals scored, but they read as like it goes from 8 minutes and then it basically just increases every few minutes until the most recent goal, which was 99 minutes. So
yeah, it's all the goals, but arranged in the order of the minutes of the game when they scored them,
okay,
sort of
okay.
thing. So
I thought it was
it's not the order of this goals they scored them as they scored them, but the order of the goals by the minutes that they scored them in. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's less interesting to me because I was like, well, they've scored
What?
their last 5 goals have all come after the 95th minute. Like that would have been
Well, okay, that would have been pretty interesting if they'd done that. But still, the fact they've scored 5 goals at all this season after the 5th minute of, well, from the 5th minute of stoppage time onwards is pretty insane, considering they've only scored 2 goals in the first 30 minutes of games. Somehow they scored 5 goals in the 5 goals after 4 minutes played of stoppage time.
Let's go with 2 goals before the 30th minute, and let's make it 9 goals after the 80th minute.
Yeah.
And we'll say they've scored 13 goals in the second half. But 9 goals after the 80th minute, 2 goals before the 30th minute. Most recently, we had was that with the Western Sydney Wanderers, where Moreno scored the goal and then broke down in pain on the turf behind you there.
Still don't know exactly why he did that, but maybe
Well, I mean,
maybe he got an elbow in the celebrations or something. I don't know. Or the moment was just too much.
yeah, every time I see a pile-on football soccer celebration, I'm like, okay, chill out. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's one thing football can learn from rugby league. But the rugby league celebration that I'm talking about, it does often end up in the pile-up because the Penrith Panthers started doing it where everyone just rushes in and piles on top of the try scorer standing up like a big old huddle, like
Yeah.
we're just coming in. But then
There's always one guy who arrives late and jumps on top of everyone as well.
and you get a lot of those bodies jumping in, running in, like someone's going to fall over and end up on the turf, and then they all just pile on top of each other. It's like, what? So your celebration is just lying on top of each other? Like, I don't really understand it. But Moreno and Auckland FC had a crack at such celebration, and deservedly so because they scored a goal late in their game against Western Sydney Wanderers. But they also had a late equaliser, I think, last week. They're now top
Logan
of
Rogerson.
Logan Rogerson. They are now top of the table. They're still top of the table. They are 9 wins, 3 draws, 2 losses. Next best team is Adelaide United on 8 wins, 4 draws, 1 loss. And the Auckland FC have conceded 11 goals, which is still the best in the A-League. For context, Perth Glory, hopefully Ollie Sale's doing a bit of a job down there. They have conceded 37 goals, and Brisbane Roar, last place, they have conceded 30 goals. So once again, Auckland FC have only conceded 11 goals in 14 games this season. What is something you've learned or some sort of idea that has been reinforced to you over the past week or so with Auckland FC? Because there's been this stage of the A-League season, it's a bit like Super Smash. There's games every other day. There's midweek games. There's weekend games. There's no like locked in schedule. So the games are coming thick and fast. It gets a bit more messed up in my head when I'm also trying to closely follow the Super Smash. But they're like, you have fun watching Auckland FC, that's for sure. You probably shouldn't go to bed. Like, you should definitely watch till the end because they're going to score a late goal. But is there some sort of like personnel decision? Is there a tactical decision that's been made? Is there more information about these late goals that really tickles your Auckland FC antenna?
Yeah, you got to stay up to the last minute. You got to watch the final whistle with Auckland FC, but you maybe don't need to watch the first half hour. If you're running late and you got chores to do, you can probably just check in after 30 minutes. They did actually, though, if you look at the that list of their goals, they do have a little bit of a they scored like 5 or 6 goals after the 30th minute, but before halftime. Like there's a little bit of a cluster there as well. It suggests that they finish first halves pretty well as finishing second halves extremely well. Um, I guess that is I guess you can call that a mentality thing. I guess you can call that a sort of this is a team that we know the strength of them is that defense, that 11 goals conceded through the, what is it, 14 games or something like that so far is pretty spectacular. Alex Paulsen just a merchant for clean sheets continually at every team he plays for. He just keeps keeping clean sheets. Um, that's the identity, that's the sort of overwhelming strength of this Auckland FC team. But because they're so hard to break down, I think they're very good at soaking that up and then waiting till teams tire themselves out and then kind of rope-a-doping them and scoring late in those halves. Hidden at opportune moments. Obviously, they're very good from set pieces as well, which has been massive for them. Um, and then yeah, like there's a tactical aspect to that. There's a mentality aspect to that. There's a fitness aspect to that, saying they finish halves stronger than their opponents. I mean, when you're scoring that many goals late in halves, that's just got to be the case. That's got to be true. They did have a very long preseason, and a lot of that was spent building a team from scratch, obviously. But I guess there are going to be fitness benefits to that as well. Plus, like when you think about it, they signed players like Logan Rogerson, Liam Gillian, Jesse Randall kind of thing, who are known as speedsters, who are known as very fit, energetic players. So there's probably a bit of squad building in that as well, and why there's such a fit athletic team is partly because they signed fit athletic players. Like they bought guys for that purpose. And I remember reading like last week, I think it was Steve Corica talking about because Liam Gillian's dropped out of the squad for the last couple of games, and he was saying like, well, he's not injured. His performances had dipped a little bit. He wasn't quite doing what we had expected of him. And so everything had happened very quickly for Liam Gillian. So we figured we'll put him out of the spotlight for a couple of weeks, reassess, refresh, hit the reset button, whatever the other word spinning with RE might fit in this situation. And they've got depth to pick that up. So Jesse Randall comes in. Logan Rogerson, previously, he wasn't out of squads, but he did have a little bit of a spell himself where he was not starting games for a bit, and then he comes back in, scores a couple goals, so he's back starting now. And Corica specifically shouted out the defensive work that Logan Rogerson does, which, as much as anything, isn't like him out there doing what you, for example, what you might see CJ Bott doing in the Women's Super League, or just like barging into tackles and doing big defensive action type stuff. With Logan Rogerson, I think most of that thing about him being a great defensive winger for them is literally just that he gets back. He makes the effort to make sure he is a body behind the ball. And like, that's such an advantage for your starting point defensively when you just have that extra player out wide. You're not letting in nearly as many crosses, and you're asking a team to you're telling a team they can't attack you so directly because the space isn't there necessarily because there's just a body in the way. Like just making that effort makes a massive difference, and having players who will do that is a big deal. I don't know if Nato Moreno does that or not, but I do know that he started 4 games during that little spell where Logan Rogerson dropped out of the starting lineup. Nato Moreno has started 4 games. Auckland FC's only 2 defeats of the season came within those 4 games. They also drew one of those games, so they only won once in 4 games when he started. But they're undefeated when he plays off the bench. So not only are they undefeated when he plays off the bench, he scored all 4 of his goals as a substitute, didn't score any goals when he was starting. Not only has he scored those 4 goals off the bench, but because he's coming off the bench and for a team that finishes games very strongly, he's got an 83rd minute goal to break the deadlock against Newcastle Jets in a win. He's got a 95th minute equaliser against Melbourne City. He's got a 95th minute winner against Western Sydney. So 3 of those 4 goals have been result altering late goals and within that sort of like last 10 minutes and beyond segment that we're talking about, this team, the Heartbreakers. Like he's he scored three of those heartbreaking goals. So I would say, as far as tallying up evidence and basing things on the certainties of what happened, I think it's pretty obvious that Nato Moreno is a fella you want coming off the bench. Like, he seems to be someone you want as a substitute, as an impact guy. Get him running at some tired defensive legs, as he did to score the winner against Western Sydney. Doesn't necessarily seem to be anywhere near as effective when he starts, which is a weird one to have a special substitute from one of your import spots. But it's fine. If he's scoring the late goals, who cares? So it doesn't matter when he scores them or how often he plays. If he's got this role that suits him, I think that works perfectly. And it's something Giancarlo Italiano's spoken a lot about with the Wellington Phoenix, is trying to build out the depth. Auckland FC, that's what that looks like. Like, that's what he wants, is to be able to have what Steve Corica has, of bench players who not only are coming on and bringing energy, not only coming on and making an impact on the game, but coming on and scoring extremely crucial goals that change the outcome of matches. So it's a little bit of a frisky one, I suppose, but frankly, it just feels like a perfect scenario there of like complete clarity of Nato Moreno, keeping him on the bench, keep him scoring them late goals, and keep those Kiwi wingers out there starting games, bringing their big effort and setting up things the way they have been with their good defensive work and their tracking back and all this stuff. And also, Logan Rogerson is chipping in with goals at least. Not so much for Randall and Gillian yet, but their time will come.
Well, they're also doing the hard yards that set up Moreno's winners.
Exactly.
So it complements each other, but it's not Rogerson versus Moreno necessarily. Like, Rogerson's out on the right off the top of my head. Moreno usually comes on. Like, he scored his goal from the left side of the field, I think.
Yeah, he's played both sides, Moreno. I think when he was starting, it was mostly on the right, but I think when he's come on as a sub, it's mostly been on the left. So he can go either way. But Rogerson has pretty exclusively played on the right side.
And of course, Max Mata coming into the team seems to be a very successful move as well. Obviously, I've talked about Sakai being a A-League champion player, not a champion, but
well, who knows?
Yeah, maybe like one of the best players in the A-League. I've talked about Nando Peinecker being one of the best players in the A-League. But last year, Alex Paulsen was one of the best players in the A-League as a young goalkeeper. Where are we at with Alex Paulsen as far as like being the best goalkeeper in the competition, and then being so good at being the goalkeeper that he is just one of the best players in the A-League? Because I think last year he had a compelling case as the best player in the A-League, with what he was doing between the goalposts for the Wellington Phoenix, and then, of course, his cup of coffee with Bournemouth before returning to Auckland, returning to Aotearoa to play for Auckland FC on loan.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find the numbers on this. But basically, I think he's just been as good this year as he was last year. And the difference is that he plays in a team that probably doesn't concede as many shots, therefore doesn't ask him to make as many saves. And he has had some of those clean sheets where he hasn't really had to do much for them. He's just had to not make mistakes. And of course, he's pretty good at not making mistakes, so no dramas there. But like, taking the whole season into context, I don't think there's a drop-off. I don't think there's any worse of a fit or anything like that. I think he's just been as good this year, picking up where he left off last season, just maybe a little bit less of a spotlight. Because you remember last season it started, like, of course, then you also had the aspect of him being an academy player stepping up, and it was a big unknown because he hadn't proven himself to the same extent. And then also he then made like 3 penalty saves within the first 2 months of the season. So there was rolling momentum from the very beginning. I think this year there's just been an expectation that he would be one of the better goalkeepers, if not the best goalkeeper in the league. And I think he's been one of the better goalkeepers, if not the best goalkeeper in the league. So I don't think there's been any kind of drop-off at all. I just think maybe the perspective, the narrative on it maybe doesn't have as much of it's not as much of a talking point because it's not an unknown thing. It's just him carrying on what he was doing before. But no, I think he's been superb. yeah, like have you are you asking this because you've noticed anything different or anything like that? Or like does he seem to you watching these Auckland FC games, does it seem like he's just the same guy you saw for the Phoenix?
Well, I did notice a few mishaps of like earlier in the season, maybe a month or so ago, where I did feel like he was conceding goals, which I think was when they were losing a couple of games or they had a couple draws, and it just wasn't as like he was conceding goals when I think he'd usually save those goals. But that's the standard that Alex Paulsen's set. But to be honest, this just stems from okay, Auckland FC, they've conceded the fewest goals in the whole A-League. They got the best defense by a considerable margin. We've talked about this before. Teams with Alex Paulsen have had the best defenses for 2 years in a row. You know, it seems quite compelling at this stage, but I wouldn't suggest that Alex Paulsen's more important than Nando Peineke and Sakai, two guys that I have brought up as being best in A-League talents. But I was just curious, like how you saw it, because you were closely tracking Paulsen last year through the rise of the Phoenix, and then you've also kind of covered how he started the season with Auckland FC. So I was curious if you had any deeper cut information, and you do love a bit of your XG stats. So I was looking for a bit of XG information with Alex Paulsen, but I don't know if you got it.
There are XG things for the A-League, but it's a little harder to find. There's only one or two places that bother to keep those, so I haven't got that on hand. But I can tell you, Alex Paulsen has the best save percentage in the A-League this season. So that's just straight up shots on target. How many do you save versus how many end up being goals? Well, he has the best
What's
one.
like the margin between him and the next best? Do you have?
About Patrick Beach of Melbourne City is 77.4%. Paulsen is 78.7%. But then there's a further 5% drop off to find Philip Curto in third. So there's, I think, sort of around 70 is kind of an average thing. If you're below 70, you're probably not doing that great. If you're above 70, you're doing all right. If you're above 75, you're doing outstanding. And Paulsen, for the second year in a row, is well up there as, you know, the most efficient. And he's got 8 clean sheets. I think that you did raise a good point there, though, as well. Maybe one of the other reasons why why his goalkeeping this season hasn't been as recognized as last season is also because guys like Sakai and Dan Hall, before he got injured, certainly Nando Peineke and Francis de Vries as well, frankly, have gotten themselves more of a spotlight for what they've been doing. And what they've been doing has been so good that he's just not had to make as many saves. So last year, the Wellington Phoenix, and like something we talked about a lot last season, it's still kind of true this year. They're just making a lot more mistakes, so you don't know. They're getting punished for it a bit more, but they allow a lot of shots. They allow amongst the most shots of any team in the A-League, right up there with the teams down the bottom of the table. But with the Phoenix last year, when it really worked for them and when they had the best defense, is because the shots they allowed were largely from situations where they were in control. So it's like, if you want to shoot from outside the box, it's like, go for it. We got a spectacular goalkeeper who's going to save those. Like, unless you catch a freaky deflection, nothing's going to happen from that. But we're not going to let you shoot from, you know, within the penalty spot, 6-yard box in front of the goal or anything like that. We're shutting down those areas. So they conceded a lot of shots, but they conceded a lot of low percentage shots. And Paulsen therefore faced a lot of saves, and he faced a lot of shots and made a lot of saves. This year, Auckland FC conceding the second fewest shots per game. So it's kind of the exact opposite. they just repel everything. They let teams put in quite a few crosses. They certainly don't mind that, but they don't mind that because Nando Peineke, Dan Hall, Tommy Smith are all very good in the air. So they just win those headers, repel that stuff. But the Phoenix did a bit of that too, to be fair. Last year with Scott Wooden and Finn Sermon, certainly. A little bit less so this time around. But yeah, he's gone from a team that conceded a lot of shots and let him make a lot of saves, which he did, to a team that doesn't concede very many shots. So the saves that he does have to make are maybe a little bit more selective. But I still feel like he's had a fair few of those highlight ones. He just hasn't had to face a penalty yet. Well, he has faced one penalty. I can't remember who that was, but it says here he's faced a penalty and he didn't save it. So someone
Yeah,
scored a penalty against Auckland FC.
That's why I thought he's been shit this year because he
Because he
conceded.
didn't save this penalty. Yeah, I
Just
know.
he
I
said
guess
it.
that's the big black mark against his name. But other than that, I think he's been every bit as good this year as he was last year. It's just a situation which maybe doesn't highlight what he does as much.
So you'd say for second season in a row, Alex Paulsen is the best goalkeeper in the A-League.
I would emphatically say that. Full chest out, I'm saying Alex Paulsen continues to be the best goalkeeper in the A-League.
I'm glad we got you to say something with your full chest out. You
Yeah.
don't do it too often, but we got
Crack my
it there.
back doing that, but
We got it with Alex Paulsen. Just quickly, we'll roll through Wellington Phoenix quickly because we've got a lot to discuss in this podcast. I will say Wellington Phoenix men, like again, it doesn't seem like they're having the best season. It seems like the vibe around them is a bit down. But I'll hammer home my point about the Wellington Phoenix that I always talk about. Like, this is an extremely young group that is a development organization that is producing a lot of young talent. And you've actually done a deep dive into the best next tier prospects for the Wellington Phoenix men and women. But also, the Wellington Phoenix defense, they've conceded 17 goals, and they are the only team in the bottom half of the ladder who are below 20 goals conceded. Let's make it below 22 goals conceded. So they've conceded 17 goals. And then you've got, Adelaide United. They are second. They've conceded 21 goals. Macarthur FC, they're third. They've conceded 20 goals. So despite this feeling like a bad Wellington Phoenix season, despite, feeling like their defense sucks because this mishap happened for Isaac Hughes, then Isaac Hughes had another mishap, and then all these goals conceded by Isaac Hughes.
and a bit of Josh Oluwayemi as well.
Yeah. Like, it seems
coincidentally, not coincidentally, the guys who replaced Finn Sermon and Alex Paulsen after they left have come in and made a few mistakes leading to goals,
But those are unforced errors. So they've conceded 17 goals, which is, puts them maybe fourth or fifth for the fewest goals conceded in the A-League. And at least, I'd say 4, maybe 5 of them are unforced errors.
At least, yeah.
So, now, of course, they've only scored 15 goals, and it does seem like they lack a bit of goal-scoring punch. They've got Costa, but they only had Marco Rojas for a little bit, and then you've got youngsters again. Someone like Nathan Walker, he's not just going to step into the A-League and score lots of goals straight away. He's going to take some time to get his confidence up and all that stuff. But so Sydney FC, they're 7th, Wellington Phoenix are 9th, and Sydney FC have scored 32 goals. Wellington Phoenix have only scored 15. So you can look at the Wellington Phoenix. Okay, we can stash away the fact that they are full of young talent and they continue to produce high quality young talent that is getting lots of game time in the A-League. But basically, they're not very potent scoring goals, but they're pretty solid defensively. And given what we just said about the value of Alex Paulsen, the Wellington Phoenix have stayed a pretty good defensive team despite losing Paulsen and despite having a lot of young players in that defense, whether it's Isaac Hughes, Sheridan, you've got Sam Sutton's not really a young player at left back. We've had Corbin Piper playing a bigger role in the defense, whether he's playing right back, whether he's playing right centre back, whether he's playing right midfield, whatever it is. And of course, Alex Rufer has been out injured for a while now as the centre defensive midfielder. Let's just focus on the defense for this Wellington Phoenix men's segment. Is there something that you've seen tactically, strategically, personnel-wise that you like about how the Wellington Phoenix defend?
Yeah, because it's actually changed in the last couple of weeks because they've kept 2 clean sheets in their last 3 games and only conceded 1 goal across those in a cheeky little undefeated streak. Before that, they'd had a spell of 5 losses from 6 games, and they'd conceded multiple goals in every one of those 5 losses. The one game they won was a 2-1, so it was the only time they didn't concede multiple goals was the game that they won in that little stretch. But since then, 0-0 draw against Sydney, 0-0 draw against Central Coast with a 2-1 win over Macarthur in between. There has been a defensive uptick, and some of that is Isaac Hughes had a game off and has come back in looking refreshed, looking more like what he did at the start of the season. Still without Tim Payne as well, another big factor in that, but he's supposedly getting close. But they've managed to, someone like Corbin Piper's managed to do a job at least. Matt Sheridan a little bit as well. Um, and of course, most significantly, LB Kelly Hield's coming. Now, LB Kelly Hield's coming for Joshua Liemi, who was making he made a couple of those mistakes as well, a couple of those preventable goals. Well, LB Kelly Hield's come in, made 15 saves from 16 shots on target, which gives him, I think, a 93% save percentage. Not enough games played to be like a qualifier in the stats, but as it stands, that's significantly better than what Alex Paulsen's done.
I did forget about Lucas Kelly-Hield in my run through of the youngsters at the Wellington Phoenix, and you just mentioned Albie, and I outlined how the Wellington Phoenix might have a undercover good defense, and they might have an undercover good defense with a lot of young players. If we got Sheridan, we got Hughes, and we've got the Kelly-Hield. Are they twins or are they just brothers? Twins.
Yeah, twins.
Twins playing a lot more footy. Who else am I missing? Am I missing anyone else in that kind of defensive bracket? Because I don't think a youngster has stepped in to replace Rufa.
No, it's mostly been like Paulo Retre and Kazuki Nagasawa dropping a little bit deeper. So there was one half where you got a bit of Finn Conchi, if you still want to count him as a youngster, I suppose so. He'd only be like 21, similar age to Isaac Hughes anyway. So just, if it hasn't happened yet, it could still happen as Finn Conchi gets a bit more of a role there. But yeah, I mean, heard you mention Isaac Hughes, Lucas Kelly-Hield, Matt Sheridan, Corbin Piper, I suppose, slightly older, slightly older, slightly more experienced, but new to the A-League. Yeah, that's about it. Although you have had guys like Xuan Loke popping up on the bench without actually playing it as fullback cover, and Nathan Walker has played a little bit of wingback. So yeah,
but the guys who are impacting a good defense, there is a lot of young or new to A-League players there, because Corbin Piper's played a lot of minutes, Sheridan's played a lot of minutes, Hughes has played a lot of minutes. Now we're getting the Kelly-Hield twins back in action, playing a lot of minutes. We've had Roa Conchi stepping in as well. So I started thinking, okay, the Wellington Phoenix, they got a lot of young players. They've got a decent defense. But now I'm like, well, they got a decent defense with a lot of young players leading that defensive mahi, which I think is like a sneaky storyline to watch, because those are really good foundations, I believe, for the Wellington Phoenix men's team. With the Wellington Phoenix Women, they're now six wins, 1 draw, 6 losses. I think they had a good win at Porirua Park, and then they suffered a defeat away to the Mariners off the top of my head. So the Wellington Phoenix Women, they have 3 wins and 2 losses in their last 5 games. What have you noted from the past week of footy for the Wellington Phoenix Women?
Well, honestly, not much from the loss to Central Coast. It was a strange one because it didn't feel like either team was capable of scoring a goal. Like, speaking of good defenses, those were 2 good defenses playing good defensive footy. And then one of the Central Coast youngsters scored a banger from a mile out, and it's just a little bit of, one bit of magic, like a crazy moment was enough to decide the game, which is an awkward one for the Phoenix, because obviously a draw against the team that one of the teams they're going to be challenging for a top 6 spot. Like, those teams that are going to be around that sort of 4 to 8 kind of range. Central Coast are very much in there, and Central Coast go ahead of Wellington Phoenix on the table because of the slight win in what was a very even game. Like, probably deserved to be a 0-0 draw, but it's very easy. Well, it's not easy, but it's very, it can happen very quickly that what feels like it should be a 0-0 draw can suddenly become a momentous victory for the other team, because just that little flash like that. And to be fair, the Wellington Phoenix have been riding those long shots a little bit themselves. Like, 2 of their recent wins came because Grace Jale scored fantastic long distance goal to break things open. Alyssa Wynnum scored one as well right at the start of the second half a couple of weeks ago too. So they've been getting some goodness out of those long shots. Unfortunately, they got to feel what it's like to be on the other side of that equation in this latest game. The difference is that the Phoenix, when they scored those long shots, all three of those examples, the two Jale goals and the winning one, then went and scored further goals and really hammered things home after scoring. Central Coast never did that, so it was a close game. It was an open game, but just the Phoenix didn't find a moment of their own. But I don't think they played any specifically worse or different or anything like that. There was a rarity in that there was a change on the bench for the first time in ages. You actually saw a player from outside the main 16, excluding the goalkeepers, coming in. Olivia Ingham getting a little bit of a go. I think Mibe Tanaka maybe was injured or something like that. I'm not sure, but they had a very, very, very consistent um, squad, like match day squad for the last 2 months throughout their best form of their season has come with the same players, alternating a little bit in the starting lineups, who starts, who finishes, but keeping the exact same group of outfielders for about 7 or 8 games in a row up until this one. So, I mean, it's a frustrating one, but I guess it's a frustrating one in a way where like they've done this to other teams, and now a team's done it to them, and you just gotta, if you're a little bit sharper, if you create a few more chances, you can get away with conceding a freaky one. But they're just not quite there. Like they're defensively excellent. Um, they've been getting a lot better at creating and scoring goals in the last few weeks, but particularly away from home, that can be quite tricky. And they just didn't quite have it against Central Coast. Maybe a little bit of tiredness as well when there's the same players playing every week, and they've had like quite a hectic travel and just general fixture schedule recently. Maybe a bit of tiredness catching up from them there. I don't know, but they'll they'll just have to bounce back, you know. They'll just have to do better the next time, and maybe the next game they play it'll be Grace Jale who swings one into the top corner, and that's the difference in the game in their favor instead. You know, these fine margins can sometimes be pretty can be cruel, but can also not be cruel. It's just it's a matter of perspective, I suppose.
Let's roll into Super Smash, where we have CD hosting Auckland today, Wednesday the 29th. That is in Napier, and then we have Wellington versus Northern Districts on Thursday. The men's table, CD and ND both have 20 plus points. Then you got Canterbury and Otago on 18 points, and they have both finished their regular seasons. They've played their 10 games. And Wellington and Auckland are both on 16 points. On the women's side of things, we have Otago and Wellington top of the table. Both Otago has 28 points, Wellington's got 24. And then you got Northern Districts on 20 points, Auckland on 18 points, Canterbury and CD. Well, Canterbury's on 16 points and CD's on 6 points. CD Hines not doing a whole lot this season, and if you enjoy really bad cricket stats, have a look at the Central Hines women's batting stats that I did highlight in the newsletter. We don't need to talk about here, but there's a lot of players who have batted in most of the games who are averaging single digits. So Otago and Canterbury have finished their regular seasons. The Otago Sparks, they will play finals cricket. Canterbury won't be playing in the finals in the women's side, and those two teams are still in the hunt. Well, I think Otago Volts are out of the hunt for Super Smash finals because they have a worse net run rate than Canterbury. So Canterbury will be hoping... Oh, who knows? I don't want to do the math right here. Who cares? I do have one key idea.
Well, Canterbury just need Auckland or Wellington not to win, I think. That's how it goes.
Cool. Good for them.
Unless they're playing each other, in which case they need to rain off. I don't know.
I do have one key idea, and it's a fascinating idea that just comes together beautifully. Do you remember, it's a long time ago now, do you remember the Plunkett Shield first stanza?
Vaguely. Distant memory, but yeah, a little bit.
Do you remember who the best dude in the Plunkett Shield was? 23-year-old from Canterbury. Yeah, you're the
I'm
guy who
guessing.
can't.
I'm guessing it must be Matt Boyle.
You can't tell the difference between the McKenzie brothers, so it's foolish asking you. We had Rhys Mariu,
Rhys Mariu. So of course,
5
that's the
innings,
one.
and I think he might have hit it. No, he didn't hit it. 2 double bangers. He had scores
To
of.
get a 200 and a 150, wouldn't it?
He had scores of 240, 8 not out, 185, 87, and 70. So Rhys Mariu, 23-year-old from Canterbury, 590 runs, averaging 147.5, 2 centuries, and 150. In the Super Smash, Rhys Mariu has played 2 games. And he's scored 15 runs, averaging 7.5, strike rate of 107. If we go to the Plunket Shield again, Matt Boyle, decent campaign. 213 runs, averaging 35. He did hit a century and a 50. But we go to the Super Smash, and Matt Boyle is the leading run scorer for Canterbury in a Canterbury batting unit that has Chad Bowes, Tom Latham, Cole McConchie, Mitch Hay. Daryl Mitchell's played a couple of games, so he's not going to score the big runs, but Canterbury's best batter, and to be honest, Canterbury's best player, well, I'll shout this out, Canterbury's 2 best players have been Matt Boyle and Zach Foulkes, 2 young cricketers from Aotearoa, continuing the theme. But Matt Boyle's Canterbury's best Super Smash player. So right now, we have a situation where Rhys Mariu, 23-year-old from Canterbury, was the best player in Plunket Shield. He was dominant. He was scoring a disgusting amount of runs in the Plunket Shield. And that's Rhys Mariu, who has a first-class batting average of 71 after 11 games. But Rhys Mariu's not really playing Super Smash, and to be honest, he kind of sucks in the white ball formats because he's averaging 14 after 6 one-day games, and those were his first 2 Super Smash games. But that overlaps nicely with Matt Boyle dominating the Super Smash. And I would encourage anyone to, I don't know if we're going to see Matt Boyle play again, well, not hopefully, maybe we do. But you need to watch Matt Boyle bat, because that dude hits really easy boundaries. He's a big left-hander, and he, like, when he just kind of leans back to play a pull shot, he's probably hitting it for 6. There's a bit of like, it's similar to Michael Bracewell, just with less obvious power. It's more just clean and crisp striking that always makes you go, ooh, ah. So Canterbury, it's awesome how there was a dominant 4-day batter in Rhys Mariu, and now Canterbury have the dominant batter in the Super Smash with Matt Boyle. They're both youngsters, and their skill sets overlap. Matt Boyle, again, he had a solid start to the Plunket Shield, but right now, T20 batting is Matt Boyle's best format. He averages 30 with a strike rate of 144 in T20s. He averages 16 with a strike rate of 71 in one-dayers, and he averages 29.6 in first-class batting. So Canterbury, and of course New Zealand cricket, we have, not we as a Canterburyan, but New Zealand cricket, in Aotearoa, we have a 23-year-old who was dominating the Plunket Shield and is dominating first-class cricket. And there's another dude, let me get Matt Boyle's age off the top here, 22-year-old Matt Boyle, who was dominating the Super Smash. He's Canterbury's best batter in a team full of Black Caps. Well, he's their best player in a team full of Black Caps. And he's the best Super Smash batter right now in a competition that has a lot of very good batters smashing boundaries. To me, this is a nice encapsulation of Kiwi cricket. because these two dudes have dominated, but they have dominated in an overlapping way that is just nice.
Yeah, and then you add in a little bit of Zach Folks for the bowling side of things. Where did he? He wouldn't have played much Plunkett Shield the way because he would have been with the Black Caps for a bit of that time.
Zach
There's
Folks, he did play 2 Plunkett Shield games and he took
okay.
8 wickets, I think, and he got a fifer. So he did get a fifer in his 2 Plunkett Shield games. But this is 22-year-old Zach Folks, who is averaging 19 with the ball in T20s, 20.2 in one-dayers, and 25.7 in first-class cricket. And he's also started his T20 international career quite nicely with 26 average, 9 RPO. And it's also Zach Folks who had the second highest T20 international strike rate for the Black Caps since the end of last year when they went away to Sri Lanka. And he's got a career T20 international strike rate of 149. And he kind of finds it easier to bat in internationals because he's got a T20 strike rate of 131. So Zach Folks, like if we're, okay, so Will O'Rourke, yeah, he's pretty good. We've got Ben Sears, who I'm interested in with Wellington because he's off to the Champions Trophy, hasn't played a one-dayer for New Zealand yet, but he is a very good T20 bowler. Okay, he made his test debut last summer. Yeah, Nathan Smith made his test debut this summer. But there's also Zach Folks, who is just continuously excellent. And he has had an excellent start to his T20 international career, but I will again reinforce this idea that I believe Zach Folks is a test cricketer for New Zealand. He will play more one-day internationals. He's already played one, but he didn't really do anything. Might have been rained off. But Zach Folks can be a test cricketer. To be honest, he is I think he can be a test all-rounder, batting ahead of Nathan Smith. And Zach Folks has been excellent for Canterbury in the Super Smash. He is on 13 wickets, averaging 17.
So there's 3 players right there, all of them. How old's Matt Boyle?
22.
Right. So 3 players right there, all playing for Canterbury, maximum age of 23, who are not just good for youngsters. Like they're not just good compared to other under 23s players. They're good compared to everybody. Like they're just among the best players across all of the domestic formats between them. That seems like a nice thing. Like I agree with your point of niceness there. That is that's cool. I like to hear this stuff.
But then there's also another dude who...
Oh, there's more.
Another dude by the name of Kyle Jamieson, who's got a test bowling average of 19.7, and he's not Canterbury's best bowler. Like he didn't take many wickets to start the campaign. Funnily enough, when I think Canterbury were losing a few games, he took his last 10 games. He took 4 wickets in the first 5, and he's got and he took 4 wickets in a game against Central Districts that was rained off. So he hasn't. Like he's got 5 games in his last 10 where he doesn't have a wicket. But Kyle Jamieson is conceding 6 RPO in the Super Smash. Matt Henry, might need to talk about Matt Henry because he's also dominating cricket in Aotearoa right now. But he's the most economical Canterbury bowler, 4.6 RPO. Kyle Jamieson's right there with 6 RPO. And the thing that I've been thinking about with Kyle Jamieson, this dude is he's the swingingest bowler in Aotearoa right now. He always swings the ball. Super Smash, okay, maybe not everyone's swinging it. Maybe some are swinging it when conditions help. Kyle Jamieson swings the ball no matter what. And to be honest, I think his main swinging movement right now is the away swinger to right-handers, which is the complete opposite of what made him so lethal when he started his test career, when he was bowling those hoop and in swingers. But he can bowl the hoop and in swinger. So Kyle Jamieson swings the ball consistently when not many others are swinging it as much as him, and he swings it both ways. Let alone the bounce and control that he has with those skill sets. And I think, like, out of sight, out of mind type of stuff with Kyle Jamieson. But if you're watching the Super Smash, you're watching Kyle Jamieson swing the most, swing it when no one else is swinging it, and swinging it both ways, which is a great sign for Kiwi cricket. Now, Kyle Jamieson won't be playing for the Black Caps anytime soon, because they're off to the Champions Trophy. So Kyle Jamieson's just building up his overs. I think he is one of the busiest bowlers for Canterbury. 36 overs is the most. Ish Sodhi is next with 33. And I think we'll go back into a forward trophy where Kyle Jamieson will just build up his overs again. At some point this year, Kyle Jamieson, praise Jah, will return to the Black Caps. And it's going to be a very funky boost to the Black Caps when we have Matt Henry blasting off into Aotearoa's best bowler status right now. We've got those young bowlers, Will O'Rourke, Ben Sears, Nathan Smith. They're all off to the Champions Trophy. Fantastic experience for them. 2 of them bowl over 140 Ks. Nathan Smith can give 140 Ks a nudge. All 3 of them move the ball in rather funky ways. Will O'Rourke's got the in-swing to the right-hander. Ben Sears has traditional outswing. And Nathan Smith has the Tim Southee, what did I call it? The swing, the snap. He's got the Southee snap with his swingers. But we also have Kyle Jamieson doing crazy stuff in the Super Smash. So it's fantastic to see. Do you have any, you are partial to Matt Henry. Do you like, what do you reckon about Matt Henry and even the return of Kyle Jamieson?
Well, I mean, obviously the Champions Trophy is just way too soon for Kyle Jamieson. You can't go into playing, tournament cricket where you're bowling potentially 10 overs multiple times a week, where he's only really played T20s at the moment. But like you said, you get through the Super Smash, you get into some Ford Trophy, you get through the Ford Trophy, you start get a couple of Plunket Shield games in potentially. There is a tour to Zimbabwe mid-year that feels like it could be a nice one for him to target. Like if he gets through the domestic season unscathed, which knock on wood, cross your fingers, whatever. If he does that, I don't see why he wouldn't then be completely on track to then go play against Zimbabwe. That seems like the one. That seems like the course of action that he will be at least aiming for. As for Matt Henry, yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing you got some numbers or something like this to add to it, because at the moment he's just the best New Zealand bowler in maybe all 3 formats. Like it's kind of he's always been amazing at ODIs. That hasn't changed throughout his career, but he's become our best test bowler, and suddenly he's just also, he was never a bad T20 bowler. I think he just didn't play as much T20. Now he's playing a lot of T20 and he's pretty awesome at that. Certainly for Canterbury, he's been pretty hard to hit. So, and popping up with big wickets too. So yeah, I don't know. I want to hear what you've got to add about Matt Henry.
Oh, he's just awesome. I don't know.
Okay, that's all it needs to be. We'll echo it.
I think Peter Fulton said how he could see himself, Matt Henry could see the opportunity at becoming the leading bowler for New Zealand with the retirement of Southee. What do you want to do your little, should we do a Matt Henry versus Tim Southee Trent Bolt after X amount of games thing? So can you pull up the Tim Southee and Trent Bolt after Test ODIs, T20 International, whatever they are? Below the not strictly, but Matt Henry's averaging below 27 in first class List A and T20s. He's averaging 23 in first-class bowling, 26.3 in list day bowling, and 23.7 after 150 T20 internationals. We don't necessarily assume or connect Matt Henry with T20 bowling excellence, but he's doing it, and he's been doing it for a long time, to be honest, without playing for New Zealand a whole lot, because he's only played 21 T20 internationals. I do think this will be the legend of Matt Henry requires a pretty big Champions Trophy performance, I believe, because he will be the leader of the attack. And not only is he the leader of the attack, but we're talking him up right now. And it's like, okay, can he actually do it in a major tournament where he's bowling in UAE and Pakistan, where he might, because we use the term again, we connect and think of Matt Henry as seam movement. I don't think he's going to be getting the seam movement in Pakistan and UAE that he would like, but maybe that's where he gets more a bit of like his accuracy, his heavy ball, and his change-ups become more prominent, and perhaps that is an opportunity of growth for Matt Henry. But if the Black Caps are going to make the semi-finals of the Champions Trophy, Matt Henry has to be tippity top. He has to be firing on all cylinders. He has to be in a groove for Aotearoa. And that is especially important because we look at the other bowlers in that squad: Will O'Rourke, Ben Sears, Nathan Smith, maybe Lockie Ferguson, maybe not. But there's 3 young seamers who will be following Matt Henry's lead. And whether Matt Henry's taken big wickets or not, I think the Black Caps need him to be building pressure. So, like, if Will O'Rourke, so it just eases the burden on someone like Will O'Rourke, especially, who is the spray can of New Zealand bowling. But when he's on, he's on. And I can also see it for guys like Ben Sears and Nathan Smith, who could be quite expensive in those conditions, depending on how much they bowl. But all 3 of those dudes can be quite expensive in batter-friendly conditions. Will O'Rourke, Ben Sears, Nathan Smith. They are all wicket-taking bowlers, but they will need Matt Henry tying up an end, building pressure, and then, which then flows into Mitchell Santner. If you have Henry and Santner bowling economically, I think that is going to be a big strength for the Black Caps at the Champions Trophy, given that I believe a lot of runs will be scored. So if you can build that pressure, and then batters are trying to smack Will O'Rourke, Ben Sears, and Nathan Smith around, I think that's where the Black Caps could have some success. But let's compare Matt Henry to Tim Southee and Trent Boult. Matt Henry has played 30 tests. I don't want any of your context, respectfully. Don't give me any context. Just give me the average after 30 tests for Tim Southee.
30 tests for Tim Southee. He was averaging 30.79.
So we got Southee averaging 30.79. Matt Henry is averaging 29.84. Trent Boult after 30 tests.
Trent Boult, cumulative average, 30 tests, 27.39.
So Matt Henry, 30 tests, is better than Southee, slightly worse than Boulty. Matt Henry has played 85 one-day internationals and he's averaging 25.43. What is Tim Southee averaging after 85 one-day internationals?
85, we have 30.96.
And
for
Boulty.
Mr. Southee. And for Mr. Boult, 24.96.
Ooh. So Test
Boult was
and
pretty good in ODIs from day one. Yeah.
Tests and ODIs, Matt Henry is better than Southee at this stage, slightly worse than Trent Boult. T20 internationals, 21 T20 internationals for Matt Henry, averaging 23.66. Southey.
What
What
have you got RPO as well for T20?
8.29.
Ooh. See, Tim Southey, after 21 T20 internationals, 25.32 average, 8.44 RPO.
But
And
again,
Trent Bolt,
Henry's slightly better.
and again, Bolt was slightly better as well. Bolt is 19.96 with 8.03. So he's in the middle. And that's pretty good because we know how good Southey and Bolt were across their careers.
But Will O'Rourke's better than them at this stage of his career, as we discussed a few months ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, that lays it out. Matt Henry is a better Black Caps bowler than Tim Southey.
Yeah, well, yeah. Statistically, yeah, okay.
How do you want to push back on that? Because I'm saying that loud and
Well,
proud.
longevity is the only thing, you know. If you do it at a slightly worse average, but for a lot longer, I think that counts for more. But it's not like
Yeah,
Matt
but
Henry's new to the Black Caps, so
I'm also saying Will O'Rourke's better than Tim Southey and Trent Bolt. So just take it with a little bit grain of salt here.
yeah,
But
yes,
but yeah, Matt
yeah,
Henry.
well,
You go.
yeah. O'Rourke obviously has to sustain it for a lot longer. But the start has been spectacular, and Matt Henry, I think, as well, especially in the Test side of things. The start of Matt Henry's career is almost misleading because we know midway through his career at this point of like the midway of where he is to now, he had a terrible Test bowling average. His second half of his Test career has been absolutely amazing. So if he's only a little bit worse than Southey at that, or a little bit, I think it was a little bit better than Southey at the same stage, wasn't it? And encompassing his whole career. Well, if you compare that to the like trajectory he's likely to go on for the next couple years, or probably for the most of the rest of his Test career, that's a lot better than what those numbers even say, because he's been that much better for the last 3 years or whatever.
Yeah, but like, who cares? Like, even with his slow start to his Test career, he's currently better
Yeah,
than
well,
Tim Southey.
that's
Yeah.
it. Even with that, he's better, and actually, he might be an even better bowler than that suggests as well.
Wicket taking charts are quite interesting here. Matt Boyle obviously dominating the run scoring charts, and you've also got like guys like Cartane Clark, Dale Phillips, Max Chu doing some good stuff. But the bowling charts, Zach Folks second for wickets, Jock McKenzie from boundary catching wizard fame, he is fifth. He's got 11 wickets and an average of 18. I think Jock McKenzie's averaging 35 with the bat, 18 with the ball. Christian Clark's got 11 wickets, fifth or sixth. Ben Sears has 11 wickets. Those are the young seamers in Aotearoa, and I do want to highlight Jock McKenzie. Said it before, say it again. Excellent cricketer, and one of the leaders of the young wave that I don't really want to highlight anyone in particular over anyone else, because again, Muhammad Abbas is awesome and so on and so forth. And none of them are as good as Zach Folks. Quickly, we got some women's cricket. So Otago, they've played all 10 games, and Canterbury have played all 10 games. I was interested. So Jess Simmons played her first game of the Super Smash. She took 2 wickets and an RPO of 7.7. And Jess Simmons also happens to be second for Canterbury wickets in the HBJ Shield. She's got 6 wickets, high average of 36, but we got spinners Frances Mackay 7 wickets, Sarah Asmussen 7 wickets, then we got Jess Simmons. But Jess Simmons has a bit about her with her, just she seems to bowl a little bit quicker than the other bowlers. But you do have Jess Simmons to watch out for with Canterbury, as well as Missy Banks, who we have talked about before. Not a whole lot. Izzy Sharp did hit a 50 a few days ago, which was good for her. Nice crisp striking. And we've got Otago, who will go deep into the finals. They may even qualify directly, I think, for the grand final. And of course, they are the most dominant domestic cricket team this summer, men and women, because they were undefeated, I think, in the HBJ Shield. And a lot of players to watch out for if Otago or as Otago Sparks get into the finals. Polly Ingles competing for a White Ferns wicketkeeper role, but Izzy Gaze has found form with the bat, so I don't think there's going to be much change there. I believe Caitlin Blakely has White Ferns potential. She's got 210 runs at a strike rate of 100. Olivia Gain, 159 runs at a strike rate of 90. Bella James has had a few scores recently, 136 runs at a strike rate of 100. Anna Browning just chimes in with runs and wickets. Eden Carson, best bowler in both competitions this summer, or one of. Emma Black's been pretty good with the ball, 10 wickets at 5.5 RPO. We've talked a lot about Otago, so I don't know what else to add, but they are 7-3, top of the table. And I reckon, once again, we've seen it with Eden Carson, we've seen it with Bella James. I reckon the next White Ferns will come from Otago, whether it's Caitlin Blakely, Polly Ingles, who's already got a contract, Olivia Gain, and Emma Black is one to watch out for with the Otago Sparks. When do Wellington play? Wellington play on Thursday, so I would like to just touch on Wellington because we've talked about the Boyle brothers, but that means we've got to talk about the Kerr sisters as well. Amelia Kerr is now the leading run scorer in Super Smash. She's the only batter with over 300 runs. 329 runs, averaging 65, strike rate of 108. Jess Kerr, 294 runs, averaging 49, strike rate of 127. The Kerr sisters have scored 5 50-plus scores in 9 games. So that's what they're doing with the bat, which is excellent. Again, Jess Kerr, she is the only batter with... We got 7 batters who have scored over 230 runs, and Jess Kerr is the only one with a strike rate over 110. She has a strike rate of 127. Jess Kerr is also fourth for wickets, 13 wickets at an average of 14. Amelia Kerr has 9 wickets at an average of 25. So the Kerr sisters, fantastic stuff for the Wellington Blaze. I'm caught between storylines here. We got the Kerr sisters trying to continue the Wellington Blaze Super Smash dynasty. Now, we've had Sophie Devine dip out of cricket, so the Kerr sisters are trying to continue the Wellington Blaze dynasty without Sophie Devine. They do have, there's a funky difference between the two Super Smash competitions. No inputs on the men's side, which is awesome because then we get all the youngsters coming and getting experience along with the best mature cricketers in Aotearoa. But we do have more inputs on the women's side, which is funky. It adds to the competition. So Wellington, I think they brought in Maitland Brown and Darlington. Sarah Glenn's playing for Northern Brave. So they do have a few imports in their team, but the Kerr sisters, they're at least 2 of the top 5 players in this Women's Super Smash, and they are trying to continue the Wellington Blaze dynasty without Sophie Devine. But then you've also got Otago Sparks, who are the best domestic cricket team this summer, who are trying to stamp their authority as the best domestic cricket team this summer, by the summer's end. And that would also, if they can win the Super Smash, I reckon that will shift the power away from Wellington. Because if, off the top of my head, it was kind of like Wellington, best team, best province, best area. Canterbury had a few moments. It was kind of Wellington versus Canterbury. Then it was Wellington versus Otago. Right now, I think it's Otago, both formats, but I think Otago Sparks need to win the Super Smash to really double down on that and establish themselves as the most dominant force in women's cricket in Aotearoa. Under 19 SG Ball and Tasha Gale Cup begins in New South Wales this weekend. So this is New South Wales Under 19 Rugby League, and the Warriors have an SG Ball team, and they are first SG Ball team of the year. You should sign up to our newsletter, thenishcase.substack.com, which always has a bunch of Kiwi NRL notes, and probably every Friday we'll be dropping notes that I have for the junior teams named. Don't go below under 19s because that just gets a bit iffy. So we just stick it to the under 19 level and above. And of course, we've got the Warriors SG Ball team. They are taking on Manly Sea Eagles in Sydney. First thing for the Warriors is that Kahu Kappa starts at centre and Augustino Filippo starts at lock. They both had train and trial contracts. So they've been basically training with the NRL squad. Now they're back down to under 19s where they will be starting players for the SG Ball team. Kahu Kappa, I believe, is a Western Suburbs junior from Taranaki in the New Plymouth, and Augustino Filippo is a Mangarees junior in Auckland. There's also Mahana Pauling from St. Thomas of Canterbury. He is starting at fullback, and we have Isaiah Savia starting at hooker. He is also from St. Thomas of Canterbury, and there are two notable hookers from Canterbury in the Warriors system, assuming that Makai Tafua, yeah, well, he is because he had a train and trial contract. So Makai Tafua is looking to get a lot more New South Wales Cup game time this year, but there's also Isaiah Savia starting at hooker for the Warriors SG Ball team. And in the halves, we've got Maui Winatana Patalaseo, who is from Wellington, Te Aroha Jr. He is starting halfback. He played a bunch of SG Ball and Jersey Flegg Cup games last year, with Noah Jensen starting number 6. So, like, what's one of the main Warriors storylines I've had over the past couple of years?
Aussie halves.
Aussie halves, but there's no Aussie halves in the Warriors SG Ball team. They're two Kiwi lads, Maui Winatana Patalaseo from Wellington and Noah Jensen, who I would like to learn a little bit more about. He is at Westlake Boys High School, or he was, or he may still be. And I believe I think he's a Glenfield junior. Not confident about that, not saying that with my chest just yet, but he's definitely at Westlake Boys High School, and he played league at Westlake Boys High School during the National Secondary Schools tournament. So he is starting number 6. Maui Winatana Patalaseo is starting number 7. The dudes who I think we had who played Jersey Flegg last year, I think we have Winatana Patalaseo, we have Filippo, and Hiraka Waitai Haenga, who is from Hamilton Boys High School, and he is named on the bench having been a centre for the SG Ball, maybe even the Jersey Flegg Warriors last year. So it's an interesting move for him on the bench, having been a very dynamic centre. So I'm curious to see what his role might be moving forward. I do like those powerful outside backs getting a bit more game time in the forward pack. That is always something I watch out for. So Waitai Haenga played 2 games of Jersey Flegg last year. Filippo played 4. Winatana Patalaseo played 13. And Paia Sikuvea played 4. We've got the Sikuvea brothers in the starting team. Paia Jr. and Mili Toni Molela Sikuvea. I believe they are both Mangarees juniors. So Paia Sikuvea is starting prop, and Militoni Molela is starting edge forward. So those are the main things that stand out to me with the first Warriors under-19 team of the season. Again, the fact that Kahu Kappa and Filippo had train and trial contracts suggests that they have the highest upside of these players. And that means that they could play New South Wales Cup this year. Then you've also got 3 other dudes who played under 21s last year in Paia Sikavea, Winitana Patalaseo, and who else did I say? Waitai Hainga. So those are probably the main dudes to watch out for. But of course, this is the Kiwi NRL segment. And so we've got a lot of Kiwi NRL juniors and men and women floating around the rest of these Australian teams. So I just want to focus on 3 pockets. And this is not to discuss everyone, because I don't know everyone. This is the learning stage, and we're just learning about the young men and women from Aotearoa who are playing footy over in Australia. And these are just things that stand out to me with the first round of teamless, which includes the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, who love Aotearoa. The women's team, the Tasha Gale Cup team for the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, this is under-19s. They have Shaquela Mahakito Monshel, who is the starting halfback for the Bulldogs, under-19s. And I think she's also got an NRLW contract. She is, it's a bit confusing, so bear with me. Her auntie is Shanice Monshel, who is also in the Bulldogs NRLW squad. But Shaquela's younger sister is Lanaya Daniel, who is starting edge forward for the Bulldogs in Tasha Gale Cup. So the Bulldogs under-19 women's team has Shaquela Mahakito Monshel starting halfback and Lanaya Daniel starting edge forward. Both of them, to the best of my knowledge, went to Waitakere College, and then I think they had a year or 2 with St. Peter's Cambridge, primarily for netball. But they are, I think they're pretty hearty Waitakere College, West Auckland folks. So that's good for the Bulldogs. Shout out to the Bulldogs and their love of Aotearoa. I'll update that in a jiffy. The Cronulla Sharks under-19 women's team has Aliana Tonuu, who is a Otara junior. And she was playing for the Manly Sea Eagles New South Wales Women's Premiership team last year. So that was part of a big group of young ladies from Auckland who were in the Manly Sea Eagles New South Wales Women's Premiership squad. And now Aliana Tonuu is starting prop for the Cronulla Sharks. We also have Illawara. Big derby for you. We've got Illawara versus St. George Dragons in the Tasha Gale Cup. The Illawara team has Seriah Palepale starting prop, and there's also Trinity Tauaneai, who is named on the bench. She's probably too good for that because I think she's already got an NRLW development contract. Seriah Palepale is a Mangere junior, and she and Tauaneai, Trinity Tauaneai, were in the Australian schoolgirls team last year. I think they both played junior footy for the Bulldogs. It might have been their championship winning under-17 team last year off the top of my head. And now they're both lining up for Illawara. So Trinity Tauaneai, she might still be aligned with the Dragons NRLW squad. Because, of course, Alexis Tauaneai Wainui Mata Jr., along with Trinity, Alexis has moved from the Dragons to the Bulldogs NRLW squad. So the Bulldogs do a lot of recruitment from Aotearoa. They keep building. They've actually, I wrote about this last week, they have a full-on accommodation setup that is is solely made up of young ladies from Auckland and Aotearoa, and they've got a house mum there looking after them. So that's how deep the Bulldogs' investment in women's pipeline from Aotearoa goes. We know about the men. We know they've been busy recruiting from Aotearoa on the men's side, but they're doing the same thing on the women's side. It just gets a bit funky because they didn't have an NRLW team. Now they do have an NRLW team, and a lot of their young women from Aotearoa are progressing through that pipeline straight into the NRLW mix. But Palepale and Trinity Tauaneai were initially recruited by the Bulldogs, but now they're both playing for Illawara, and I think they might be aligned with the Dragons, because there's also a Bulldogs under-19 team, so why wouldn't they be playing for the Bulldogs under-19 team if their future laid with the Bulldogs later this year? So it's something to watch out for, but they're both in the Illawara under-19 women's team. Kiwi NRL juniors or junior pockets on the SG Ball men's side, we have the Cronulla Sharks, who do love a bit of Aotearoa as well. They have the Blackburn Kingy brothers, who may also be twin brothers. I'm not sure just yet. They are from the Manawatu. I think they went to Manukura, and I think it is Fielding, but they were recruited by the Sharks to go to school in Australia. So there's a couple of yarns that are behind paywalls, but there's a couple of yarns from Australia talking them up, and they're both now in the Cronulla Sharks SG Ball team. We have Dallas Blackburn Kingy on the wing, and Hemi Blackburn Kingy is number 17 on the bench. The Sharks also have Elijah Paia, who is a Otara junior, and he went to De La Salle College. And they also have Hudson Frost, Elijah Paia is starting on the wing, and Hudson Frost is starting prop for the Cronulla Sharks, having also come out of De La Salle College, and he is an Otahuhu junior who won an award for the Warriors last year. Let me confirm this award. Under 17 Club Man of the Year, Hudson Frost. Which gets a little bit more interesting. So that's Cronulla Sharks. Cronulla Sharks, to the best of my knowledge, I've got 4 notable Kiwi NRL juniors in that Cronulla Sharks team. Another award winner from the Warriors under-17 team last year was Carwyn Patterson, who also went to Westlake Boys High School. I think he's originally from Dargaville. He was the winner of the under-17 Player of the Year. Now, he is starting hooker for the Bulldogs. So he is one of many or a few Kiwi NRL juniors in the Bulldogs SG Ball team. He is starting hooker. We've got Sasaya Alatini starting edge forward. I think Sasaya Alatini will be playing New South Wales Cup at some point later this year. He was either train and trial or development for the Bulldogs NRL squad. The Bulldogs have also named Bronson Rubin in the halves. He's a youngster from Kaiapoi and Canterbury Rugby League. He is number 6. And there's also Genesis Arkham Sherlock, who is a Linwood junior from Canterbury as well. So there is that Canterbury connection there with the Bulldogs, with 3 of their 4 notable Kiwi NRL juniors that I just named coming out of Canterbury. Sherlock is a Linwood junior. Ruben's technically it's the Northern Bulldogs, but they're from Kaiapoi. And also Sasai Alatini, who is a Hornby junior. Aside from I mentioned Cronulla Sharks twice. I mentioned, so both Cronulla Sharks under-19 teams, a couple of notable youngsters from Aotearoa, but not quite as many as the Bulldogs. But I did mention both Bulldogs teams, so that gives you an insight into the Australian NRL teams who love Aotearoa. The Cronulla Sharks and the Bulldogs love Aotearoa. But the funkiest wrinkle, I think, of them all is the Newcastle Knights. Their starting halves combination for their under-19 SG ball team, 2 lads from Aotearoa. We got Haami Loza, who is a high-profile youngster coming through the Knights system. He's played for Otara and Mangere East in junior footy. I think he went to De La Salle College as well. He is the starting halfback. I think he had a train and trial contract with the NRL squad. I expect him to play at least under-21s later this year, perhaps pushing for New South Wales Cup. But he is now being joined by Ryder Crosswell. So Loza's starting number 7. Ryder Crosswell is starting number 6. And Ryder Crosswell is from Palmerston North. He went to Palmerston North Boys High School, and he has been recruited by the Knights. I think it might have been at least last year. He was playing some under-16 games, maybe. Played a little bit for Danny Verk, but he's mainly affiliating him with Palmerston North Boys High School. So he played under 17s or under 16s for the Newcastle Knights last year, and now he's playing under 19s for the Knights in an all Aotearoa halves combination. So again, Australia, most prestigious under 19 rugby league competition in Australia. Not only do they have a lot of Kiwi NRL juniors, but there's a starting halves duo combination from Aotearoa with Ryder Crosswell and Haami Loza for the Newcastle Knights, who also have Sasai Latu, who I think he went to Otahuhu College, Mangere East Junior. He is starting centre. He played a lot on the wing last year for the Knights junior teams. Now he is starting centre. And they also have Ezekiel Aiti, otherwise known as Ezekiel Whangaaiti. He is also from Christchurch. He is a Hornby junior who was connected to the Warriors last year, but now he's with the Knights and he is named on their bench. So all that is happening this weekend, and I'll be dropping more information, more notes about those Kiwi NRL juniors in our newsletter on Friday. But the number of youngsters from Aotearoa, men and women, I'm going to be following the under-19 women a lot more closely this year as well. They're only going up. They're only going up. And of course, we got the whole Warriors stuff happening as well, which is pretty interesting considering the 2 halves for the Warriors, both youngsters from Aotearoa, and the 2 halves for the Knights, both youngsters from Aotearoa. But let's get a little bit deeper, because we got Winitana Patalaseo, he's from Wellington, Ryder Crosswell's from Palmerston North, Noah Jensen's from Auckland with Westlake Boys High School, and Haami Loza, I had seen something previously connecting him to Rotorua at a younger age, but he played most of his emerging footy in Auckland with De La Salle, Mangere East and Otara. So you got 4 young halves there, 2 different all Aotearoa starting half combinations. One of them's from Wellington, one of them's from Palmerston North, 2 of them are from Auckland, but you've also got someone like Bronson Rubin who's from Christchurch. That sums up the Kiwi NRL vibes right there. and that is the start of the Aotearoa Rugby League season. Whole lot more interesting when we're learning about players through the team list, and that's all we're here to do. Learn about youngsters from Aotearoa doing great things across all the sporting realms that we cover. You haven't said anything for a while, so I'll give you an opportunity to spout some bullkaka before we finish the podcast.
Oh, I don't know that I got anything to say. I think that might just be the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I had to give you the opportunity. You never know.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
We did spout some bullkaka, so that was good from
Yeah, I
you.
guess we
And
mission accomplished.
that is the Niche Cast. Big up everyone listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Make yourself heard, make yourself known. We may or may not take note of it because we're going to tap out from the internet for a jiffy, but we appreciate your support. We're just out here doing what we love to do. Big up yourself, love yourself, kia kaha, stay beautiful, chur chur.